Hi, Paul.
Hi, Claire. How are you?
I'm good. I feel like it's been a while since I've been on the podcast. Try not to take that personally.
Please don't.
Just kidding.
Please don't. You can take my spot any week.
No, it's fine. It doesn't come as naturally to me as it does you and Jacqueline, so it's fine.
Wow, please. Not a competition.
No, I know. It's not. How was your weekend?
It was great. I did nothing.
Okay.
For mankind. Nothing.
Nice.
I didn't even go biking. I didn't do just aggressively nothing. It's kind of a stare into space kind of weekend.
Yeah. I feel like you need those weekends once in a while. Just I don't know, like a no expectation, nowhere to be. I could have used
I had expectations. I had places to be, but I just stayed into space.
Got it.
It was great.
Got it. Well, my kids are officially off school, so our house is completely trashed and just adjusting to that new reality for the next couple of months, which is harrowing, but it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Well, it's going to be an interesting week. You get to come to Washington for an awards thing.
Yes.
At Society for Professional Journalists.
Yes. It's my first, I think, award ceremony, so I'm excited. It'll be fun.
Yeah, we'll be at the National Press Club.
Yes, indeed.
And
yeah,
it's just a question of having enough cash to buy drinks for everybody who wants them. So I'll take care of that.
Very nice.
So I'll come in with a wad of cash and...
Okay, sounds good.
It's going to be great.
I'm so excited. I have a nice bottle of wine to bring you and Susan as well. So hopefully you'll like it.
Well,
yeah.
That'll be fabulous. So...
Well, I'm going to play Jacqueline this week and walk us through the headlines. I will just kind of briefly mention story one, since that's what we plan to talk about in the body of the podcast, if you will. Story one was on new data that shows that the face of cancer is changing. It reflects on a young woman's diagnosis with a cancer that she literally wasn't eligible to be screened for due to her age and health. So we'll talk more about that. Story two was written by City of Hope's Hope Rugo on this same topic. She's also quoted in story one on the shifting cancer burden. Cancer rates in women under 50 are now 82% higher than in men of the same age, which is a statistic that should fundamentally reshape how we approach oncological care, she says. Jacqueline Cobb, you all know, our associate editor, wrote a science piece about University of Arizona researcher Dan Tedorescu's findings that the loss of Y chromosome cripples immune cells. We had a guest editorial by Mecker G. Muller from University of Chicago Medicine Comprehensive Cancer Center on equity and fairness in cancer care and advancement for the Hispanic population. And lastly, we had an obituary written by Dr. Otis Brawley commemorating the life of Herman Iyer, a former American Cancer Society chief medical and scientific officer who died at the end of May at age 84. I don't know if Jacqueline usually introduces the headlines in cancer policy, but we had kind of a juicy week, so I thought I would just run through those really quickly. We had George Segunis was named the first ever chief science advisor at NCI that you wrote, Paul. You also wrote about how success rates for RPGs at NCI would plummet if Trump's FY26 budget is enacted. Jacqueline wrote about the empty FDA booth at ASCO this year. There's an eerie kind of photo of that included in the story. I wrote a piece about the social media resistance presence on Blue Sky. CDC, NIH, NCI, and others have started these alt-government accounts to promote truth and combat propaganda. Jacqueline wrote about how nearly 11 million people will become uninsured if the reconciliation bill passes as is. And lastly, Jacqueline reported on FDA Commissioner Marty McCary's roundtable discussion on cell and gene therapy, where he questioned the construct of levels of evidence as artificial and dogmatic, saying that N of 1 stories can drive regulatory decisions. So you'll want to check that out. It's like 6 stories in our cancer policy this week. So it's a big one. Anything to add? That was a lot.
No.
Okay.
No, this was a comprehensive list.
Yes, it was.
But maybe we should just, before we get to story one, which you masterfully reported and wrote, let's just spend 5 seconds on on the lead to the section about cancer policy, which is a chief science advisor to the NCI director. I'm hearing good things about this guy, but the thing that is kind of difficult to get through my thick skull is why that position is necessary, and what's the game here. So I don't get it. Doesn't mean it's wrong. I just don't get it. Mm-hmm. There's never been one. There's been a board of scientific advisors. Why do you need a chief science advisor to the NCI director, who, by the way, is no chopped liver? Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a scientist who co-developed the HPV vaccine.
Right.
So what he needs with that, and it's also politically appointed position. Maybe, and I wouldn't put this in writing, so but we might as well discuss it here because it's a looser standard, I think. What do you think is happening here? I don't get it.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, why not? Just take a swipe at it.
I honestly was so deep in my story last week, I wasn't really paying close attention to what, I know we talked a bit about this guy, but in terms of my own personal suspicions, I wouldn't begin to try to make any claims. But I think you had an anonymous quote in the story, right? Like kind of summed it up.
Yeah, it did. I mean, basically, it's a way of the National Cancer Act requires the NCI director to be named by the president.
Right.
This is not what's happening here. Doug Lowy, as great as he is acting and does not have the same kind of political clout as a politically appointed NCI director would. But this way, they basically keep NCI under this level of management, but insert a political appointee to advise.
So are there implications that you can draw from that, or that we're supposed to draw?
NCI right now is without an advisory board that's used for 30-some years. NCI right now is under control of NIH. NCI right now is without political clout. And I don't know what's going to be happening with NCEB. I can't wait. Mm-hmm. They can't get rid of NCEB because it's in the National Cancer Act. They need an appointment with Congress for that. So the president is proposing a 40% cut, almost, for NIH.
Right.
And that's quite a bit. You might, the success rates for RO1s are going to go down to about 8 point something. There's a question, 8.2, I believe. There is also a question of what's going to happen with the money that wasn't spent this year. Are they going to just forego it, get rid of it? I don't know. And it's and of course, there's uncertainty about the big beautiful bill, and then there's also uncertainty about the one that's coming up right after it, which is the FY26. So having an NCI director, doing this without a permanent NCI director is actually probably easier now. I mean, that's if that's your goal. I don't know why anybody would have this goal, but they have this goal, it seems.
Yeah. I mean, and I feel like everything that's kind of hanging in the balance adds weight to story one, which, is about one patient who kind of represents many patients. And we don't really know what the future holds right now in terms of funding cancer research, and at a time when there's these kind of alarming research statistics coming out showing that we have this shifting cancer burden. So
that's a very appropriate segue to the point
not
where
to segue to my story.
Well, it's a seamless segue to your story, and I'm mixing metaphors like
please mix away.
Oh, no, but really, patients have not been heard from yet. And our story, i.e. your story, which is on page 1, puts a patient on the cover.
Yeah.
And we should talk about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a really weighty story, and I was really honored and privileged. I always am when a patient does, they don't have to talk to us, they don't have to talk to journalists, and when they do and they share their story and they're honest and transparent, it just means a lot to me, and it's very moving. This is a demographic, 35-year-old women, young women who are being diagnosed with cancer at much, much higher rates than they were previously. So it feels very personal, as a mother as well. So the patient that I spoke with is receiving treatment at City of Hope for stage 4 lung cancer. Alisa Secaida. She's a mother of 2 from Southern California. And she fits into the profile of this kind of shifting demographic of young, fit cancer patient that, or patient that you would never suspect to be sick. She said repeatedly during her story, as she was seeking help and trying to find a doctor to take her symptoms seriously, that she just didn't fit the profile. She just didn't look sick enough, to be taken seriously. And she doesn't, she doesn't fit the profile for screening guidelines for lung cancer, right? She's a never smoker, and she's young. I think a sentiment that she continually reiterated was that her story is not unique, that this is kind of a rising phenomenon. When she found out about her cancer diagnosis, she turned to social media, as a lot of us often do, to find, groups and a community or a sense of solidarity with people who fit the same profile as us. And she found a lot of them. So it's kind of a very, kind of a scary moment, I guess. This ACS data shows that, this just came out recently, earlier this year, that women are now being diagnosed almost twice as much with cancer as men. And that's a reversal of prior trends. So I'm just kind of jumping into the story and rambling a bit. But
let me actually interrupt you for a second. There is it's not an aberration. It's not some artifact that you're seeing. Because there is actually data to show that this is happening. And by this, I mean people under 50 getting diagnosed increasingly with cancers. And women are almost twice the risk of men in that age group. Yeah. That's what as an editor, I saw in your story. Yeah. That's correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
And ASCO had a session on this chaired by Kim Rathmell. Yeah. Yes. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, that was a big feature of the ASCO panel was on the rising incidences of colorectal cancer, which have been in a lot of headlines recently. But 10 common cancers are on the rise, not just CRC. I believe that colorectal cancer is kind of the kind of an exemplary cancer for studying this problem, according to epidemiologists. So that's why it's been kind of a lot of research has been focusing on CRC. But, for someone like Alisa, lung cancer kind of fits into the same category of cancers that used to, disproportionately affect, they were cancers of an aging population and they were not associated with younger people. So there's this kind of paradigm shift happening where, a young, healthy looking person walks into a doctor's office and they're told they have long COVID or they're working too hard or maybe to find get some support with childcare. These types of things, these stories seem to be recurring. So, with Secaida, she couldn't get the treatment that she desperately needed. And as a result, has now undergone the full gamut of cancer treatments and is living now with an incurable disease and will be on some type of treatment for the rest of her life. And one of I think the most powerful but also disturbing quotes that she gave me was that, it's not lost on her that had she been taken seriously earlier, I think her symptoms started showing up a year before she was diagnosed with lung cancer, that she might have been able to avoid a lot of those treatments.
What would be the lesson you're taking from this as an observer and not just a reporter?
Yeah. That's a good question. The lesson, not to make this about me, but I have a rare disease that affects me when I'm pregnant. So I've been on the side of having something weird that's outside the standard of care, being a young woman that's otherwise healthy. And kind of needing to advocate for yourself when you know something's wrong, which is way easier said than done, I think. There's this moment in the story with Alisa where she had paid for her own CAT scan, right, out of pocket. She had found this place in Orange County, California, that would give her a CAT scan because she had been complaining about her symptoms, not complaining. She had been, processing her symptoms with her girlfriends. And one of them who worked for the LA Fire Department was like, you can just pay for one, just get a Groupon and go get your own CT scan. You don't have to wait for a doctor's referral. And she didn't know she could do that. So she did. Paid $450 in cash, brought the results, which showed a mass and, enlarged lymph nodes to her provider at the time, and was told that everybody in California has nodules, and just kind of dismissed again. So, she really fully needed to take this into her own hands. And it wasn't until the point of that was that she took the proof of her, what she thought was going on to her doctor, came home, was dismissed. And her husband actually went back and advocated for her. And she got an email with a referral to a pulmonologist that day. So it's, this idea of self-advocacy and, your body better than anyone else. It's a tricky place to live, I think, when you are a patient, especially a woman. So, I think that's my takeaway, when I attended the City of Hope webinar that kind of presented this ACS data, a big piece of that was advocacy and learning how to advocate for yourself, and teaching doctors and providers to advocate for their patients. But I think that's kind of a maybe a paradigm shift that oncology isn't quite prepared for. Young people. I'm not sure. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, it's just so complicated because on the one hand, reading this with 2020 hindsight, you kind of have to say, oh, that doctor wasn't listening to the patient. On the other hand, looking at it from the point of view of, evidence-based medicine, those Groupon self-referrals, where $450 buys you a CT,
right,
is an abomination.
Right.
It's exactly where the U.S. healthcare system is as screwed up as it is, and why we are getting the worst possible care at the highest possible price.
Yeah.
So I kind of, on the one hand, found myself sympathizing with the patient. On the other hand, I was also sympathizing with the physician who said, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah.
So that was my kind of where I was finding myself.
No, I mean, I think the tricky part, and I think is that the many doctors would have done the same thing. It's no one, there's not really a bad guy here. It's just that like things are happening and we're not, there's not only our guidelines and screenings, practices, standard of care is not caught up, but I think biases are not caught up either. When your entire practice, cancer has been associated with an aging population, and then you have a young, beautiful, healthy-looking woman like Alisa Secaida come into your office. it's not a surprise that the doctor would, their knee-jerk reaction would be like, maybe just slow down, So I don't think that there's nothing, malicious happening here. Which is what makes it even more nuanced and such a difficult gray area for young people, who are told to advocate for themselves, because sometimes that falls flat.
I'm just thinking out loud. There is this effort right now underway to get make it easier for patients to speak about what's happening, because it affects them more than it affects cancer centers. Cancer centers are basically at the service of patients. Patients have the most at stake here.
Right.
And if they are losing insurance, losing access to clinical trials, losing access to care in every way, isn't it time for them to be heard? I mean, this is a democracy. So there is an organization that's starting. We haven't done a story on it, but probably will very quickly. It's called Patient Action for Cancer Research, and I can't wait to tell everyone about it. What are your thoughts about what patients can do right now?
Yeah, I think. Obviously, we're journalists. We know that storytelling has a lot of power. And I guess my one thought would just be that, the more stories that we hear that, in this case, for my reporting, Alisa Secaida is one of many. And, she's in that way kind of the voice of people who have experienced a similar, type of successive dismissals followed by, an aggressive cancer diagnosis that possibly could have been avoided. And I do feel like there's power in numbers when it comes to those types of stories. So I think hearing these things over and over, we all, if these rising cancer incidences are trending in the way that this data suggests, and, I should mention that the earliest data that we have is from 2021. That's the ACS data. So, who knows what's happened in the past couple of years here. But if things are trending in this direction, we will hear about it. And I think we will, these young people need to have a platform, I think, to share those stories. Whether it's us, a magazine, or, an advocacy network like the one that you're describing. But I think it would be amazing to hear from more patients. And I hope to be, kind of a safe person for that to happen. I love talking to patients, but I know it can be kind of intimidating for a lot of people who don't, they're maybe feeling more vulnerable, or afraid of backlash or something like that. It's a weird time to be a journalist. It's a good time. It's a weird time. Media can be intimidating. So those are my thoughts.
That's why it was so important to get the story on page one. And we're talking, I think, about not only younger people with cancer, but also pediatric patients, but also just everybody. And I think they need to be heard in a systematic way. And to do that is actually much simpler than it appears. It's actually not a very difficult thing to do, given the technology that's available and given the types of people who are now getting involved in this. And there will be more in the cancer letters, so we'll continue with the story. Thank you.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Paul.
All right. Thank you, Claire.
Yeah.
Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.